Welcome to today's event, The Update, presented by Kandji. The explosive growth of technology has spurred the need for device management and security tools to empower productive and secure global work. But is it enough to have the right tools? It's becoming imperative that enterprise technology tools work together. Today we're going to hear from a few Kandji partners on how they're helping enterprises make productive, secure global work possible. Let's introduce our panelists. So first we have Matt Egan, Director of Technical Strategy, Corporate Development at Okta. Alex Marshall, Co-founder and Chief Product Officer at Twingate. Jonathan Wong, Product Manager, Integrations at Tugboat Logic by OneTrust. A unique challenge of how technology has grown and shifted is that this has led to greater diversity of devices, identity issues, security, employee mobility, and exponential growth of unique applications. Matt, how has this landscape impacted the need for identity management?
How hasn't it impacted the need for identity management? When you take a look at that, Okta is an identity company, and zero trust. If you take it, obviously I'm biased, but if you take zero trust and you peel it away, ultimately it becomes identity-led security. And how do you enforce security on, where identity is as far left in the equation of the who has access to the what, right? You want that as far left and as early in the decisions as possible. So we talk about the diversity of not just devices, but applications, the different types of data, where it resides. It's no longer all on premises or in applications that you control, and so the traditional boundaries of applying security are eroding, and leaving us with ultimately really just one fixed entity in that equation, and that's the who. And so Okta helps overcome that by being an identity company that provides strong authentication, like diverse strong authentication. So we provide you with authenticators, but we also support an open ecosystem of authenticators, and then bringing in additional context, device context, provided by fantastic partners like Kandji, and then data context, with the OIN, with sweeping integration catalog of 7,500 applications, right, addressing the diversity of targets, the resources that we're trying to get to. So bringing that all together to make sure that you can securely and simply allow anybody to access any application from anywhere, and hopefully, well, not hopefully, with strong identity, the right person accessing that data.
Yeah, you mentioned identity-led security as something, and identities becomes really essential to managing enterprise applications today. So if you would just tell us a little bit about Okta and how you're meeting the challenges of identity management today.
Yeah. You take back, I've been at Okta for 5 years. Prior to that, I was on the operational side dealing with a lot of these headaches, and I think anybody that's faced those challenges could easily say that there is no one source of identity. As much as Okta wedges itself in and provides an opportunity, when you look at the various sources that are coming into Okta, that's one of the strengths that Okta has in its universal directory, and it truly does provide that universality. We're taking identity sources from human resources applications, which is that works a lot. That works very well in your traditional employee working for an enterprise. But then you've also got contingent workers and consultants that are coming in on short-term engagements or as flex work, and so the identity problem, the various who's, is not an easy one to solve. So Okta gives you an opportunity to introduce all of those identities into one ecosystem, and then the other half of that equation is, okay, now I've got all these identities, who has access to what, and there's a lot of data around the what that we help normalize. That sweeping catalog of 7,500 integrations also gives us coarse-grained information about the types of data that exist in the types of systems, and so administrators are then empowered to put together policies that help say who has access to what with greater fidelity on either side, and then provide the additional conditions of from what devices, or devices with what types of attributes are they managed, are the disks encrypted, all of those things can be pieced together in a nice little policy statement that can either say, no, you don't get access to this, or yes, you do with some additional verification of user, or you don't meet the requirements right now, so I'm going to give limited access. And that it's not perfect. There's definitely additional opportunities for improvement, but it helps people take some steps in the right direction.
That's awesome. You mentioned the really quite large number of integrations that Okta has available. How does partnering with device management security tools like Kandji benefit Okta?
Yeah, as you take a look at, in the middle of that equation, becomes a lot of, hopefully, as granularly as possible, if then else statements that are going to help ensure that the appropriate conditions are being met, right? That could be something as simple as time of day, but specifically Kandji, it details about the device, the posture of the device. Is it managed? Is it not? Is this a BYOD device? Kandji wouldn't be involved in that play, but from an Okta perspective, that does give us an opportunity to define these policies that are saying, hey, this is not a managed device. Maybe that's okay for getting to lower security resources, different data there, but for more sensitive applications, we're going to want to make sure that they're managed. So anyways, having those integrations, with Kandji allows us to get those signals, so that on a case by case and authorization by authorization use case, we have an opportunity to use those signals that we're getting from partners like Kandji to then inform our access decisions.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Thank you.
Despite changes in how we use technology over the years, access control sometimes has been frustratingly archaic. Passwords, VPNs have proven to not only be a major source of security breaches, but are also sometimes frustrating for both admins and users. So, Alex, on your website, it says that Twingate is the first zero trust access solution with the ease of use and deployment you expect from a modern technology product. Can you tell us a bit more about Twingate and how you're replacing technology like VPN that's been around for decades?
Yeah, so we started Twingate 3.5 years ago after doing a whole bunch of research into how companies were securing remote access. And the thing that we noticed is that people were still incredibly frustrated, even though it was 2019. And so you'd think that with the sort of development of companies like Okta and others, where there's been a lot of innovation that's happened, really for the remote access space, very little has happened. Most people at the time and still today are really using VPNs, which was designed in the 1990s. And so I think very close, like the topic we're all talking about today, integration is actually a really key part of our strategy. So the question that our product really asks every time a user makes a network connection is, should this user, so that's the identity component that you're just hearing about, on this device, on this context, so that could be where they are, what type of network they're on, that type of thing, or what historical access patterns that user has had, should that user, with all those things in mind, be able to access a given resource? And there's a lot that we can do, and there's a lot that our technology does sort of under the hood to make that possible and to make it really, importantly, make it really easy. But we don't have all those data points available. And so a really critical part of our product strategy is making sure that we collect all those different data points from different products, whether they're MDM vendors or identity providers or other security solutions, and really just tie all that together. So that's really been the pain point we've really been addressing, which is that it's really hard to manage access today because IT and security teams are really trying to piece together a whole bunch of different solutions that don't really talk to one another.
You mentioned ease of use, right, as something that's really important to your customers. Can you expand on that a little bit? Why is it important that security solutions like Twingate offer that ease of use to customers?
Yeah, I think it's really because at the heart of it, without ease of use, you don't get adoption. And so there's a lot of examples over the years where there's been really great technology that hasn't really been adopted very widely because users have either, because they haven't liked it, they've either basically rebelled against IT and the company, or they just found ways to work around it, right? And so how many times, like just use VPN as an example, again, have you heard like people say like, I just hate my VPN because every time I use Zoom, it slows down my connection, right? So I think there's two aspects that are very important to our customers. Like one is making sure that the user experience is really smooth, because if you have a smooth user experience, then you're going to get great adoption, which then increases overall security for the organization. And the second part that I think not enough companies or products pay attention to is how easy it is to adopt the technology. So there's this whole concept of sort of change management. So you bring in a product into your organization, how do you actually get people to adopt that product and use it? And so it's something that very early on we spent a lot of effort on, is making sure that you could take your existing technology, which again is usually a VPN or something like it, and then the next day tell all of your employees that you're using a product like Twingate, and then just have that switch over be automatic. And so there's a lot of effort that we put into that to also make sure that change management adoption process is really straightforward.
Great. Alex, how does Twingate integrate and partner with device management and security tools like Kandji?
Yeah, so for device management tools, Kandji is like a perfect example. We have this whole framework in our product around device security. And the way that this device security framework functions is that there are a number of verification methods that the administrator can enable. And so for example, the administrator can say, I'm going to enable this integration with Kandji because I'm using Kandji to manage my devices, and they probably, I'm sorry to say, they're probably also using other MDMs for different platforms. And so it's actually really important in our product that we support integrations with all the different variants for different platforms, because that allows the admin on the Twingate side to say it doesn't matter which product is being used for mobile device management or EDR or other like sort of methods of verifying the device, is like just want to know, is this device owned by the organization? Is it managed by the organization? And therefore, can I make some decisions about access? And the last thing I'll say on this is the other reason why like this integration is really important is what we're really doing is we're delegating device, the sort of device configuration and device policies to a product like Kandji. And so from our standpoint, it's just really onerous to be this sort of one layer that somehow implements all these controls on any device on any platform. It's actually a lot better from an IT and management side, if the Kandji administrator determines what the device policies and requirements are, and then we trust you to implement those on the devices that are managed. So.
Great, thanks, Alex. So as we talk about identity management and access control, then the topic of compliance comes up, that companies need to achieve compliance. Maybe for the first time to achieve compliance with a certain framework or standard, or as companies adopt new technologies, they need to maintain compliance. So Jonathan, can you share with us how Tugboat Logic takes the misery and mystery out of security audits?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Tugboat Logic is really all about getting you compliant, get secure, and get through that compliance that really no one on the IT security team really loves to do. We use integrations like the integration we have with Kandji to pull in evidence directly from devices so that you don't have to worry about going through and screen capping every single device to ensure that disks are encrypted, firewalls are deployed, perhaps a VPN or something like Twingate is deployed on there as well.
Great. Where does a company start?
Company usually starts from what we call the scoping survey. So you're trying to figure out exactly what compliance do I want to go after, whether it be a SOC 2 or an ISO 27001, and what is involved with that. Following that, you're looking at trying to identify all the different risks involved in your organization. So where are the things, the crown jewels that I really care about, and what are some of the countermeasures after that, the controls that I can implement that may involve, again, tools like Kandji or Twingate or Okta, that will help me essentially mitigate and treat those risks so that overall I am compliant, secure, and I can build that trust with the companies that I want to do business with.
You mentioned a few compliance frameworks, SOC 2, ISO 27001. Where would a company go to learn more about these compliance frameworks?
Well, you can contact us directly at Tugboat Logic, for sure. Otherwise, there are tons of resources available out there about all the compliance frameworks, really.
Awesome, thanks. So how does Tugboat Logic integrate with device management security tools like Kandji?
We integrate with tools like Kandji to pull evidence directly from the providers and their devices in the case of Kandji. So we're looking essentially to automate evidence collection so that the IT and security teams don't have to do it. Previously, it's been a very manual process. Oftentimes, it involves a lot of screen captures. You can imagine if you're a company with 200 devices, going to every single one and capturing a screenshot of, hey, my file vault is enabled or my firewall is enabled. It's a very cumbersome process, one that IT teams hate doing, and one that we can certainly automate, make it easier, faster, and you can go back to doing your actual job of being secure.
Thanks, Jonathan. As companies work to empower their workforces to be more productive and secure, IT and security teams find themselves working very closely together. At many companies, IT and security are ultimately on the same team, or they are the same team. As we bring things to a close, I want to ask each of you a question. How will the convergence of IT and security impact the future of how enterprises work? Matt, can we start with you?
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting one, and I mentioned before I had that operational role and got to see some evolutions in this one, right? So the security team was largely a compliance team initially, you know, in kind of the way back system, and there was a lot of separation, a lot of left hand not knowing what the right hand was doing. They would go on and buy tools to go and assess security, and then come back to IT with a list of essentially demands, and we would say, well, we can't really do that for, you know, reasons, some of them good, some of them bad, some of them laziness. You know, and IT oftentimes not seeing the objective, the forest for the trees. You know, so that progression for us was a little bit, you know, initially just working closer and starting to share some vision, like, hey, no, we need this SOC compliance or SOX compliance was usually the one that would nail us. Some of the more galvanizing events, though, were when we went through breaches and actually got to experience some of the pains of not being secure, and that really, you know, galvanized those things. And I think, you know, as I was departing, it was a much more integrated team, and security had shifted left in our evaluation processes. You know, so I may have lost track of the entire question, but the convergence is, if it isn't already in your organizations, it feels like an inevitable thing, or a thing that you should drive towards, because having you know, the compliance mindset that a security team is striving for in the operational IT experience is ultimately going to, you know, one, save time, and you know, two, create better outcomes where you get the push and pull of a security mandate juxtaposed against, I think we mentioned, you know, it's going to be easy to adopt, right? There's nothing worse than trying to compel onerous security policies on a user constituency, and then watching the ways that they can rebel and reject those things and circumvent you know, any of the security policies, and ultimately render them worthless. Mm-hmm. So.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Alex, what's your perspective on this, the convergence of IT and security, and how that will impact the future of how enterprises work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's very similar to what we were just hearing here. So I think the way that we look at things is that the world has like really changed, and a lot of tooling and processes haven't caught up. And so we're really see ourselves as sort of part of wave 3. Okay, so if you think about wave 1 was everybody was in the office, your computer was in the office, the applications in the office. It's pretty easy to secure. You just put a firewall around everything and you're good to go. Wave 2 was basically taking everything that was on-prem and then moving it to the cloud. And so obviously like there's huge industries that have been built out of that, but it was more of like an operational change, right? So now we don't have to like, you know, buy a bunch of hardware and that kind of stuff, but we're going to move everything off, and largely processes and integrations remain the same. I think where we are like wave 3 is that is sort of taken hold, and also people can really work from anywhere, and obviously the pandemic has accelerated that movement, but that was always there. And so now it's really, really hard. You've got individuals working everywhere, all different kinds of devices, all different kinds of networks. There's really no such thing as sort of like a corporate network boundary. And so what I think has really changed is that things have gone from being more reactive to proactive, whereas in the past, you could make sure you had like really good security tools in place to make sure that you could figure out what happened, or, you know, lock things down when something's occurring. It's actually really, really hard to do that now. And so what's really important, and why I think like IT and security are coming together, is that you have to have very proactive security tools in place to do as much as you can to get a handle on like what's going on. And so we really see this with our customers, where it's really, really challenging for them to pull a bunch of information together from a bunch of different tools that don't speak to one another. And so really I think that's where these integrations, that's the whole topic we're talking about today, is just so critical for these things to work together for the benefit of customers. And yeah, I think just as a example of this, which I'm sure will resonate a lot of people that are watching this right now. We recently did an audit of the sort of SaaS tools we're using internally at Twingate. We actually have more SaaS tools than employees. And so I think it's like a really good example of like how difficult the problem is, especially when you're a young company and there's lots of really great point solutions for running all different kinds of tasks. So,
yeah. Thanks, Alex. Jonathan, same question for you. So how is the future of work, the future of how enterprises work affected by this convergence of IT and security?
I think often we see like IT security and compliance as almost like separate things, separate entities, sometimes even governed by separate teams. And through integrations with things like Kandji and what we call oftentimes the democratization of governance, risk, and compliance in Tugboat, what we're trying to do is bring all of that compliance frameworks, controls closer to the IT security teams so they can focus on just the pieces of the puzzle that they have to work out, and not worry about some of the other broader policies, the risks, some of the other stuff that goes along with implementing a GRC.
Just an open question for the panel here. Mm-hmm. As you look ahead to the future, what trends do you see emerging in this convergence of IT and security? What should IT teams and security teams be thinking about as they look ahead?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that like we've seen in our customer base that's incredibly important is automation, and it's a little bit to sort of the similar topic of what we were talking about before, where you have lots of tools, lots of different places. It actually gets really hard to manage all that, and so we've definitely seen like a really strong trend of automating things. And there's a lot of benefits to that. Automation brings a lot of predictability. It also means that there's less sort of manual work that teams have to do. It also means that for like products like Tugboat, where you need to do these like constant audits, there's actually somewhere where you can go that presents like a really clear and deterministic picture of like how things should be configured. So I do think that's really big. One of the things that we've done at the very beginning is offer an API for a product. We've actually said to our customers, like, we actually don't care whether you use our like UI admin console or not, because you can still get the same value from our product if you use our API either directly or in concert with automation tools like Pulumi or Terraform. So I do think that's something that, like a trend that I see is I think that APIs have sort of become standard, but I think there'd be more automation around tools that are developed in that, where that's like a common deployment method.
Yeah. Jonathan, I think automation is a big part of the story at Tugboat Logic as well, right?
Yeah, I think one of the things we hear a lot about from our customers and clients are how do you build trust through the supply chain? My colleague mentioned that he potentially has more SaaS applications than he has employees. But how do you trust that all those SaaS applications are going to be good stewards of your data and consequently your business? Because if they get breached and they're in trouble, your entire business could be in trouble as well. So compliance is the start of that, and Tugboat, through its automated compliance and evidence collection, can really help you jumpstart that. But how do you build that trust among other companies beyond compliance? Because let's face it, some of the compliance frameworks are a little bit out of date, they're a little bit vague. So just because I have a SOC 2 does not necessarily mean that I'll be a great steward of your data. It just means that I've kind of cleared that bar of the ride is this tall, or excuse me, You need to be this tall to ride the ride. But how do I go beyond that is really the question.
Great.
And so, a trend that I see, and we haven't really touched on, but I think I'm going to use it to kind of tie together a couple of trends. I'm seeing a wave of pressure around cybersecurity, and why is this coming in, and how does it all tie together, right? The cybersecurity insurance specifically, and insurability requirements, which are going to fall into like, hey, are you compliant with the overriding industry standards that you need to be meeting, or maybe some specific, do you have MFA for your VPN or other network security things, because they've kind of picked some of those out. But the insurability puts teeth behind a lot of the compliance specs that were there before, right? I need to be SOC 2 compliant because people want the warm fuzzy. Well, when we're talking about cybersecurity insurance, now we have an insurer who is financially liable for you not pulling your weight in that. If you just do the bare minimum to be SOC 2 compliant, or if you cheat a little bit, ultimately they're not going to let you do that anymore, right? You might have been able to, like, hey, let me send you the screenshot that I sent last month because I'm either lazy or something changed that I don't want to have to account for. That's going to compel the cybersecurity insurers to want more automation and more verifiable, compliance versus the, Scouts Honor type compliance that we've maybe relied on in the past. Yeah. And it's also kind of spurning now as an organization that's now looking at their policy that is astronomically expensive. That's a pain that's going to say, no, I need real security tools. And I never had budget for security tools before because it was just a cost center, and every business was just a business to whatever it was. They're making widgets, right? They're not security companies, but every company is becoming a technology company because of democratization of so many different things that rely on technology and automation, which means we all have to adopt more technology than we've been adopting in the past, referencing more apps than customers, right? And that's something that Okta sees all the time, right? Many companies will have hundreds of apps that are in Okta, but when you take a look at the totality of the landscape, there's a lot more that aren't wall to wall, or they didn't rise up to be big enough. Anyway, I see the insurability, the pain of the premiums. They have a financial element to that are going to drive a need to actually be secure, a need to have more security tools that are in place, and security tools that are going to allow them to scale the business, right? What Twingate's providing to get away from these traditional walls of the hardened outside and the soft GUI inside, Okta with identity-led security, and anyways, I see that as a good trend that hopefully moves the security bar forward for more organizations.
Yeah. As we've talked about this future and the convergence and what that means, some of the things I heard were the importance of integration, being able to tie tools together. The proliferation of SaaS tools at many companies follows the pattern that we've discussed here. The ability to exchange data and information, to have a comprehensive view of what's happening, and the utility, right? The real benefit of automation in that process, because it allows IT teams and security teams to do more and to deliver more value to their organization. Are there any other trends or thoughts about the importance of automation that come to mind as we prepare to close up today?
I think one of the things that comes to mind is, I don't know if it's like exactly around automation, but I think it's very related to it, is how do you know later on how you can piece together information from different applications? And one of the things that we've talked to our customers about quite a bit, especially since we really operate at this pretty low network level, where we're looking at TCP and UDP connections, is one of the things that we do is we tie that traffic back to a user's identity. And so I think that's just one of the challenges that comes along later on, is if you have to go back and look at something forensically, or try to get some tools to talk to each other, it's how do you actually get them to talk to each other with a common language? Which for us right now is really, I think the thing that we're seeing is the user's identity is that common language. So that plays a pretty big part, I think, for what we see on the automation front.
Great. Jonathan?
I think the biggest thing we see, at least in the compliance space, is, I think I've said this before, but bringing the IT security teams closer to the compliance realm. And one of the ways of convincing them to do that is through automation, because it ultimately will make their lives easier in the long term if you can do it right. Otherwise, I think as I said before, you keep getting these screenshots, we keep doing all this manual labor, which is really no fun and not something that IT security teams really want to be wasting their time on, if I may be so bold, when they could be, looking for threats and making sure that you're actually secure, as opposed to doing these very manual and very dull activities.
Okay.
Things that have a greater impact, right? Ultimately, automation. And I know for me, when I had operational IT roles, my friends that are still in those operational IT roles, nobody wants to go and collect screenshots. Nobody wants to go and configure the boring VPN or identity things. Ultimately, IT people are in IT for reasons. They're I don't want to call them lazy. They're efficient, right? And they want to be efficient, and so automation is the epitome and realization of efficiency. So again, it's going to provide plenty of opportunities for compliance and the operational side of IT to come in and accomplish greater security together.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Matt. And thanks to all of our panelists, Matt, Alex, Jonathan. Thanks for being with us today and for having the discussion. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We hope you're able to learn about this convergence of IT and security and how our partners are helping to make that convergence happen and help those teams work together. If you're interested in learning more about Kandji and what we do, please visit us at kandji.io/start. Thank you.